Alexander Valterovich Litvinenko was a fugitive officer of the Russian FSB Secret Service, who specialized in tackling organized crime. In November 1998, Litvinenko and several other FSB officers publicly accused their superiors of ordering the assassination of the Russian tycoon and oligarch Boris Berezovsky. Litvinenko was arrested the following March on charges of exceeding the authority of his position. He was acquitted in November 1999 but re-arrested before the charges were again dismissed in 2000. He fled with his family to London and was granted asylum in the United Kingdom, where he worked as a journalist, writer and consultant for the British intelligence services. During his time in London, Litvinenko wrote 2 books, Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within and Lubyanka Criminal Group, wherein he accused the Russian secret services of staging the Russian apartment bombings and other terrorism acts in an effort to bring Vladimir Putin to power. He also accused Putin of ordering the murder in October 2006 of the Russian journalist Anna Politkovskaya. On the 1st of November 2006, Litvinenko suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized in what was established as a case of poisoning by radioactive polonium-210, which resulted in his death on the 23rd of November. He became the first known victim of lethal polonium-210-induced acute radiation syndrome. The events leading up to this are a matter of controversy, spawning numerous theories relating to his poisoning and death. A British murder investigation pointed to Andrei Ljugovoy, a member of Russia's Federal Protective Service, as the prime suspect. Britain demanded that Ljugovoy be extradited, which is against the Constitution of Russia, which directly prohibits extradition of Russian citizens without handing Russia any evidence related to the case. Russia denied the extradition, leading to the cooling of relations between Russia and the United Kingdom. After Litvinenko's death, his widow, Marina, pursued a vigorous campaign on behalf of her husband through the Litvinenko Justice Foundation. In October 2011, she won the right for an inquest into her husband's death to be conducted by a coroner in London. The inquest was repeatedly set back by issues relating to examinable evidence. A public inquiry began on the 27th of January 2015. Early life and career. Alexander Litvinenko was born in the Russian city of Voronezh in 1962. After he graduated from a ˈvaltərəvʃɪtʃ secondary school in 1980, he was drafted into the internal troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs as a private. After a year of service, he matriculated in the Kyiv Higher Command School in Vladikavkaz. In 1981, Litvinenko married Natalia, an accountant, with whom he had a son, Alexander, and a daughter, Sonia. This marriage ended in divorce in 1994, and in the same year Litvinenko married Marina, a ballroom dancer and fitness instructor, with whom he had a son, Anatoly. After graduation in 1985, Litvinenko became a platoon commander in the Dzержinski division of the Soviet Ministry of Internal Affairs. He was assigned to the 4th Company, where among his duties was the protection of valuable cargo while in transit. In 1986 he became an informant when he was recruited by the MVD's KGB counterintelligence section, and in 1988 he was officially transferred to the 3rd Chief Directorate of the KGB, military counterintelligence. Later that year, after studying for a year at the Novosibirsk Military Counterintelligence School, he became an operational officer and served in KGB military counterintelligence until 1991. Career in Russian security services. In 1991, Litvinenko was promoted to the Central Staff of the Federal Counterintelligence Service, specializing in counter-terrorist activities and infiltration of organized crime. He was awarded the title of Mir Veteran for operations conducted with the Moscow Criminal Investigation Department, the Mir. Litvinenko also saw active military service in many of the so-called hotspots of the former USSR and Russia. During the First Chechen War, Litvinenko planted several FSB agents in Chechnya, although he was often called a Russian spy by Western press. Throughout his career he was not an intelligence agent, and did not deal with secrets beyond information on operations against organized criminal groups. Litvinenko met Boris Berezovsky in 1994 when he took part in investigations into an assassination attempt on the oligarch. He later began to moonlight for Berezovsky and was responsible for the oligarch's security. Litvinenko's employment under Berezovsky and other security services personnel was illegal, but the state somewhat tolerated it to retain staff who were at the time underpaid. Thus, Litvinenko's employment for the controversial businessman and others was not investigated. Often such inquiries in Russia were selective and targeted only at those who had stepped out of line. In 1997, Litvinenko was promoted to the FSB Directorate of Analysis and Suppression of Criminal Groups, with the title of Senior Operational Officer and Deputy Head of the 7th Section. According to Dmitry Simes, the directorate was viewed as much as a part of organized crime as it was of law enforcement. Claims against FSB leadership. According to Litvinenko's widow, Marina, while her husband was employed in the FSB, he discovered numerous links among members of the top brass of Russian law enforcement agencies of Russian mafia groups, such as the Solnzevo gang. Berezovsky arranged a meeting for him with the director of the FSB, Mikhail Baskov, and the deputy director of internal affairs, Vyacheslav Ovchinnikov, to discuss the alleged corruption problems, with no result. This led him to the conclusion that the entire system was corrupt. In December 1997, Litvinenko claimed he received an order to kill Berezovsky. He did not inform his part-time employer until the 20th of March 1998. According to his widow, on the 25th of July 1998, the day on which Vladimir Putin replaced Nikolai Kovalyev as the director of the Federal Security Service, Berezovsky introduced Litvinenko to Putin. Berezovsky claimed that he had helped Putin to take the director's position. According to his widow, Litvinenko reported to Putin on corruption in the FSB, but Putin was unimpressed. According to Litvinenko, Putin was involved with a corrupt military general in the Russian army when Putin was a deputy for economic affairs to the mayor of St. Petersburg. Litvinenko was doing an investigation into the general and Uzbek drug barons and believed that Putin tried to stall the investigation to save his reputation. On 13 November 1998, Berezovsky wrote an open letter to Putin in Kommersant. He accused heads of the Directorate of Analysis and Suppression of Criminal Groups, Major General Yevgeny Kokholkov, Stepanov, Kamishnikov, Yenin, of ordering his assassination. 4 days later, Litvinenko and 4 other officers appeared together in a press conference at the Russian news agency Interfax. All officers worked for both FSB and the Directorate of Analysis and Suppression of Criminal Groups and for Boris Berezovsky. They repeated the allegation made by Berezovsky. The officers also claimed they were ordered to kill Mikhail Trepashkin, who was also present at the press conference, and to kidnap a brother of the businessman Umar Drabrailov. In 2007, Sergei Dorenko provided the Associated Press and the Wall Street Journal with a complete copy of an interview he conducted in April 1998 for ORT, a television station, with Litvinenko and his fellow employees. The interview, of which only excerpts were shown in 1998, shows the FSB officers, who were disguised in masks or dark glasses, claim that their bosses had ordered them to kill, kidnap or frame prominent Russian politicians and businesspeople. Jim Haynes of the Associated Press opined that although Berezovsky does not appear in the interview, he has an omnipresence in it, given that the officers worked for him, and the interview was taped by Dorenko, a Russian journalist who was an employee of ORT owned in part by Berezovsky. Dismissal from the FSB. After holding the press conference, Litvinenko was dismissed from the FSB. Later, in an interview with Yelena Tregubova, Putin said that he personally ordered the dismissal of Litvinenko, stating, "I fired Litvinenko and disbanded his unit, because FSB officers should not stage press conferences. This is not their job, and they should not make internal scandals public." Litvinenko also believed that Putin was behind his arrest. He said, "Putin had the power to decide whether to pass my file to the prosecutors or not. He always hated me, and there was a bonus for him. By throwing me to the wolves he distanced himself from Boris Berezovsky. In the eyes of FSB's generals, flight from Russia and asylum in the United Kingdom. In October 2000, in violation of an order not to leave Moscow, Litvinenko and his family traveled to Turkey, possibly via Ukraine. While in Turkey, Litvinenko applied for asylum at the United States Embassy in Ankara, but his application was denied. Henry Plater-Zyberk opined that the denial may have been based on possible American opinions that Litvinenko's knowledge was of little benefit and that he might create problems. With the help of Alexander Goldfarb, Litvinenko bought air tickets for the Istanbul-London-Moscow flight, and asked for political asylum at Heathrow Airport during the transit stop on 1 November 2000. Political asylum was granted on 14 May 2001, not because of his knowledge on intelligence matters, according to Litvinenko, but rather on humanitarian grounds. While in London he became a journalist for Chechen Press and an author. He also joined Berezovsky in campaigning against Putin's government. In October 2006 he became a naturalized British citizen with residence in Whitehaven. Cooperation with MI6. In October 2007, the Daily Mail, citing diplomatic and intelligence sources, claimed Litvinenko was paid about £2,000 per month by the UK Secret Intelligence Service at the time of his murder. John Scarlett, the head of MI6, was allegedly personally involved in recruiting him. In May 2008, The Independent opined that whilst Litvinenko's cooperation with MI6 would likely never be confirmed, an MI6 retainer that he was reported to have been receiving suggested his systematic cooperation. Litvinenko's widow, Marina Litvinenko, has stated that her husband cooperated with the British MI6 and MI5, working as a consultant and helping the agencies to combat Russian organized crime in Europe. In February 2012, Litvinenko's father, Walter, apologized for what he called his personal slander campaign against the Russian government. Before the confession by Marina Litvinenko, he had publicly blamed the Russian security services for his son's death. In an interview, Walter Litvinenko said that if he had known at the time that his son was a British intelligence agent, he would not have made such accusations. During the public inquiry started in January 2015, it was confirmed that Litvinenko was recruited by MI6 as an informant in 2003, 2 years after he arrived in London, given an encrypted phone and assigned a minder, Martin, who had a meeting with Litvinenko the day before he was poisoned. Alleged threats against Litvinenko. Mikhail Trepashkin, a former FSB officer, stated that in 2002 he had warned Litvinenko that an FSB unit was assigned to assassinate him. In spite of this, Litvinenko often traveled overseas with no security arrangements, and freely mingled with the Russian community in the United Kingdom, and often received journalists at his home. In January 2007, The Polish newspaper Dziennik revealed that a target with a photo of Litvinenko on it was used for shooting practice by the Witязь training center in Lตั๋chica in October 2002. The center, run by Sergei Lျaiuk, is not affiliated with the government, and trains bodyguards, debt collectors and private security forces. Although in November 2006 the center was used by the Witязь for a qualification examination due to their own center being under renovation, the targets, which Lျaiuk says were bought in the Olympic market, were also photographed when the chairman of the Federation Council of Russia Sergei Mironov visited the center and met Lျaiuk on 7 November 2006. When asked why the photographs of Mironov's visit were removed from the center's website, Lျaiuk stated, "Those Poles are up to something," and added that Mironov didn't see the targets and knew nothing about them. Allegations of blackmail activities. A series of newspaper articles by Julius Litvinenko and James Hartfield based on interviews that they had conducted with Litvinenko were published, beginning 27 hours after Litvinenko's death, with an article in the Daily Telegraph. 8 days later, The Observer published an article in which Litvinenko alleged that Litvinenko said he was planning to blackmail or sell sensitive information about all kinds of powerful people, including oligarchs, corrupt officials and sources in the Kremlin. She said he mentioned a figure of £10,000 that they would pay each time to stop him broadcasting these FSB documents. Hartfield was a researcher and writer, and Litvinenko a researcher in political theory and aesthetics, both at the University of Westminster. Their interviews with Litvinenko were source material for an article, The Russian Security Service's Ethnic Division and the Elimination of Moscow's Chechen Business Class in the 1990s, published in Critique. Conviction in Russia. In 2002, Litvinenko was convicted in absentia in Russia and given a 3.5-year jail sentence for charges of corruption.